So mental health is it's one of those things that is everywhere. It's talked about, you know it, but I don't think it's one of those things that you realize is either becoming part of your life or is already a part of your life. It's one of those things that's, because there's no rule book to mental health, it's very hard to gauge when it started in your life. If it's in the life of your friends or family, it's quite easy to hide. But it's a big thing these days. So the important part, I guess, of mental health is needing to talk about it. It's one of those things that you definitely put in the back seat, whether that be the back seat of your mind or something that you're like, I'll bring it up with my friends later on or my family. It is something that takes the back seat, which unfortunately just means it gets worse over time. Well, there's resources, there's support networks, but there's still I feel there's a big gap between the organisations and the resources that are available and actually taking the step to taking on board those resources. Whether that's because it is stigmatised, whether you feel that it might be something wrong with you, and we know that that's not the case. It is a chemical basis, but one does get one ruminates on it and one thinks that it's something that they have to address themselves. So it is, because of that stigmatization, it is a silent and hidden issue, especially for the people from younger backgrounds, men and boys, and especially from the cold community as well. Because the way mental health is spoken about, it's seen as an issue that one has to deal with themselves, especially when it's not specialized to sort of communities. There's a lot of stigma within those communities. It's a sort of closed off group. So you hear things and people are like, there's this idea of getting over it. Just get up in the morning, have a shower, get ready, look nice. And my experience with seeing it is, I talked about it. I was in groups that were open about it. My colleagues and my generation is generally pretty good about these things, but yet you still find a way not to address it. And I think it is a mixture, it's a plethora of things. You've just got resources, the stigmatization, the silence of it, the idea that you could deal with it before you ask for help, and just those things sort of incubate mental health and mental health issues. So when you do finally get around to addressing it, it's become much bigger because you just let it sort of grow.
How does it become much bigger? I mean, can you tell me a little bit, describe what this is big?
I think so let's have a look at something like you break your leg, right? You feel pain. That is your body's way of telling you that you need to go see a doctor. A physical, something that you can sort of see. If you're with family or friends, they'll be like, go check that out. The issue with mental health is, firstly, there's no blueprint. So you can't be like, oh, I'm feeling like this. So this might be an indicator that there's something, it might be anxiety, it might be depression, or it might be a range of things. And there's no blueprint for you to cross-check. If there is a blueprint, which there is plenty of resources, we're very good at convincing ourselves nothing's wrong. Unlike a sort of, if you break your arm or you see blood, that is an indicator that something needs to be done. Unfortunately, you could be bleeding in the mind per se, but you won't really do much about it. Whether that's because you've got priorities, you've got family, you've got friends, you keep it under wraps, so you keep yourself busy, you work, you address other people's needs before yours. And because I now believe that if you let it sort of just sit there and you don't address it, over time it will start taking over other aspects of your life. For those that are lucky that it just sort of comes and goes, that's great. But for others, I think it seems benign at first, but then it sort of slowly starts growing. And there is an environmental impact. If your environment that you're in starts getting stressed out, you have something unforeseen within family or friends, they do add to this sort of aspect of it growing and getting bigger. So in my experience, what I saw was I didn't attack the root of the problem. I believe mental health does, in a lot of ways, stem from an issue or something in your life that sort of manifests itself. And if you don't address the root of it, it's all fair and good to tell your friends, hey, look, I can't come over this weekend or I can't do this. But it's the little things. They say everything is good in hindsight. You know, you look back and you see the little things that start going off. It's a very, I think, just like they say, you know, when they cook, I think it's a lobster, chuck the lobster in and they slowly turn the temperature up. It's like that. It's a slow burn per se. And because of that slow burn, I think you don't realize it's happening. It becomes your truth, it becomes your life, it becomes your code of conduct. And I guess because you'll catch up with a friend for coffee and you tell them, you talk about the weather, you talk about the sports game on the weekend, but you can't tell them, hey, I felt like this on the weekend, so can we get down to it? And it's that lack of conversation, it's that lack of sort of, you know, prime example, you meet a friend, you meet a family member, how are you going? I'm great. It's that just sort of status quo that means that you never really talk about it, you never really address it, and it just sits there and it gets worse. So that I think is a big part for a lot of people. They say you should sort of, the more you leave it and let it go, the more bigger it becomes. But we're not very good at addressing our own issues. I think one of the prime examples of that is that once you say something's wrong with you, then you're telling yourself you have to deal with it. And those two things are all fair and good, but directly dealing with things is it's a hard thing. We're good at not dealing with our own. You know, we'll give the advice to friends, but we won't take the advice. I think the biggest step, firstly, is getting rid of the fear. The fear is the fear of stigmatization, whether that be by friends or by family. I think stops a lot of people from reaching out in the first. It is
Of stigma.
stigma. It's a fear of judgment. It's a fear of. There are a few people who don't understand the roots of mental health. So in that sense, the comments such as "just get over it" or "have a shower" or "come out and meet me for coffee. Why are you skipping?" It's that understanding which I think magnifies that feeling of whether that be anxiety or feeling of sadness or contempt for oneself. That fear sort of just manifests itself there. Even if you do have understanding family or friends, which a lot of people do, there is always still that nagging feeling that maybe it's something you're doing wrong. That maybe you're not eating well, or maybe you're not healthy enough, or it's unfortunately there's not like a little app I can open up and it can tell me, hey, today your mental health is down there. And for a lot of people, especially for me, my experience was because I didn't have something telling me something was wrong, I kept putting it off. Because you think, surely it can't be me. You just sort of keep putting it off, surely it can't be me, I'll keep busy, I'll put it under the carpet, and then it just becomes something that you can't control.